This video is brought to you by Ridge Wallet, a slim front pocket wallet available in carbon fiber and titanium. With more than 250,000 sold, a lifetime guarantee and free shipping, get 10% off with the code GOLDFISH at ridgewallet.com. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So as you know, Wednesday means it's Wildcard Wednesday here in Instant Deck Tech land, and it seems like just about every week over the past month, we've been showing off a Legacy deck, and they've been pretty popular. I've been enjoying them, so we're looking at Legacy again today, and we have a deck that's not only spicy, but not too expensive by Legacy standards. 913 bucks, not bad in a format where decks are like $3,000, $4,000 a lot of times, so semi-budget friendly, and that deck is Hypergenesis, which is a super unique put big stuff into play combo deck, and it comes to us from Suzuki Kantaru, who took it to a top 8 finish in a small Japanese tournament, so congrats to Suzuki on a really cool deck. A quick reminder before we break down Hypergenesis for Legacy. If you enjoyed the deck and you want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So let's talk some Hypergenesis for Legacy, starting with our namesake card, Hypergenesis. So Hypergenesis is part of the same cycle with Restore Balance, which we've played in Modern recently. Living End shows up in Modern, and this is the green version, and it's basically the Suspend edition of Eureka. So Hypergenesis, when it resolves, starting with you, each player can put an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land onto the battlefield from their hand, and then you repeat the process until no one puts it into play. So, for example, we resolve this, we put a land into play, our opponent has the option to put something into play. Let's say they put a land into play, then it goes back to us, and we get to put something into play. We go back and forth doing that until nothing else is put into play. So the idea of this deck is we are built around Hypergenesis with tons of super big powerful things, so ideally when we resolve it, sure, our opponent's going to get to put a bunch of stuff into play for free, but the stuff we get to put into play for free is going to be bigger and badder and more game winning than what our opponent has. So to get Hypergenesis into play, we're kind of using the same trick that you see like Living End and Restore Balance use in Modern. We're cascading into it. We're not just suspending it, waiting 3 turns. That's way too slow in a format like Legacy. So our deck is built where Hypergenesis is the only thing that costs less than 3 mana in our deck, which means when we resolve a Shardless Agent, a Violent Outburst, or an Ardent Plea, we know that we're going to end up cascading into that Hypergenesis and casting it right away. So step 1 are the cascade spells. Step 2 is making sure we can cast them as quickly as possible. So the idea of this deck is we want to be resolving Hypergenesis by turn 2 at the latest. Turn 1 with an insane draw. So to make sure we can get it out as fast as possible, we have Elvish Spirit Guide and Simian Spirit Guide. Just exile from our hand, plus 1 mana, expensive enough that they don't get hit by Cascade. And then we have some tricky lands. Irrigated Ditch, Sulfur Vents, not great lands, but they are interesting because we can sacrifice them to add 2 mana. They each add a mana of 1 color, but we can sack them to add 2 mana. So if we play either one on turn 1, on turn 2 with another land, we get up to 3 mana. That's where our cascade spells are to get to our Hypergenesis. So let's assume we pull all this off. We get a cascade spell, we use our fast mana, we cast it, we hit a Hypergenesis, maybe on turn 1, on turn 2. What are we putting into play? And here, we have a ton of fun options. So our biggest, baddest cards are Chancellor of the Annex, Emrakul the Eon's Torn, and Worldspine Worm. So Emrakul, Worldspine Worm, they're just big and devastating and gonna kill our opponent super quickly. And remember, unlike other cheat things into play decks, Hypergenesis, we get to put everything from our hand into play. So we can put an Emrakul and a Worldspine Worm and a Chancellor of the Annex and just have the biggest, craziest board on turn 2 that you've ever seen. Chancellor of the Annex, while it's a fine thing to put into play, the real reason it's in our deck is because it's a big flyer on its own, but it's also protection from counter spells. We can reveal it in our opening hand, and the first spell our opponent casts basically gets Force Spiked or Mana Tithe. They gotta pay 1 mana, so we can reveal some of these in our opening hand, maybe Hypergenesis on turn 1, and have protection from Force of Will. Worst case, we're slowing our opponent down a little bit along the way. So those are the big finishers that are just super devastating, but we've got more options as well. Progenitus, just a one-of, but it's protection from anything, wins in 2 attacks, basically impossible to deal with outside of Wrath. Elesh Norn gives us protection from a bunch of small creatures. Our opponent empties the Warrens or puts a bunch of small things into play with Hypergenesis. Elesh Norn's going to Wrath them all away. And then Maelstrom Wanderer, we're not really ever going to cast it, so we're not going to cascade off it, but it gives all of our creatures haste, which means our Emrakul, our Elesh Norn, our Progenitus, our Worldspine Worm are just smashing our opponent immediately, so we can theoretically literally win the game on turn 1 with the right draw with this deck, involving Maelstrom Wanderer. Otherwise, Prime Speaker Zagana, another one of, it lets us refuel if we need to spin again. If we have kind of a weak Hypergenesis, we don't have the Emrakul, the Worldspine Worm or something, we can put Prime Speaker into play, draw like a bunch of cards, assuming we have something else big out there, and then we hopefully find more Cascade spells, can run it back, do it again. Otherwise, Arcane Artisan is not something we really want to cheat into play, but it's kind of our backup plan for winning the game. A new Battle Bond card, so you have 3 mana, and then you can tap it. Target player draws a card, then exiles a card from its hand. If it's a creature card that's exiled, the player gets a token that's a copy of that creature. So in theory, we can just play this, loot with it, exile an Emrakul, and we get an Emrakul token. Of course, if Arcane Artisan dies, that's bad, and we lose the tokens, but it's another way we can win with these big things in our hand. For defense, we gotta kind of go a little bit non-traditional because of the restriction of not playing anything except for Hypergenesis that costs less than 3 mana. So Force of Will, counterspell to force our opponent's forces mostly, make sure our Hypergenesis resolves. Detention Sphere, kind of catch-all removal. Vendilion Click, kind of our Thoughtseize type effect. We can also put it into play with Hypergenesis if we want to. As far as the mana base, we talked about the sack lands for turn 1. We also have 1 basic forest and then a bunch of 5-color land. They do run out, most of them, but in theory, we're winning the game like on turn 2 anyway, so we don't really got to worry about Tend to Icebridge losing its ice counters or anything like that. As far as the sideboard, Thrun the Last Troll, True Name Nemesis, Arcane Artisan are basically backup plans. If we're worried that we're not going to be able to win with Hypergenesis and it could go wrong somehow, we can't just play Thrun, uncounterable, beat our opponent down. True Name Nemesis, if we get it down, really hard to deal with protection from our opponent. Arcane Artisan, we talked about to cheat stuff into play. Leyline of the Void, Rest in Peace to deal with graveyard decks. Wear Tear to deal with artifacts and enchantments. Things that would make us only cast 1 spell a turn are really devastating, as is Chalice of the Void. So being able to answer Rule of Law, Chalice of the Void, really key. Supreme Verdict, just a sweep away against creature decks. And that is Hypergenesis for Legacy. And that's been our Instant Deck for today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.